Hi everyone. The author that I chose to research is John Scalzi. And I chose John Scalzi because I've read a lot of his works before and I really like his writing style and his stories. So to start off, John Scalzi was born May 18th, 1969. He attended the Webb Schools of California and the University of Chicago. And right out of college, his first job was a film critic at a newspaper called the Fresno Bee in California. And he said he really liked this job. He said it got him kind of into writing more fiction stories. And then officially in 1998, he became a freelance writer, and he's been writing ever since. Since 1998, he's gone on to achieve quite a bit of success. He's won the Hugo, the Locust, the Audie, the Cian, and the Kurd Lausowitz Awards for his writing. Along with his writing, he's also been a creative consultant on the show Stargate Universe. He was also a former president of the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Writers of America from July 2010 to June 2013. And then currently, which is pretty cool, he's working on adapting 2 of his books into films for Netflix. So he's the executive producer for the soon-to-be films Old Man's War and The Collapsing Empire. But since 1998, since he's been writing, he's been pretty influential and pretty relevant in the sci-fi community. He's also pretty active in his community and with his fans and with other writers. He has a blog called Whatever, and on his blog he voices his opinions on different social issues, and he has a lot of discussion with people, with his fans on the blog too. He also talks about his current works, what he's currently working on, what he hopes to work on, and his past works, and does some fun posts like what he recommends people read from his works. And he also participates in a couple charity fundraisers, getting his fans to help him raise money for certain causes and other writers. But some of his more notable works would be Red Shirts. Red Shirts is a parody on the Star Trek universe. If you've seen Star Trek, there's this joke in it that the people who wear the red shirts die most often or all the time. So the book is kind of parodying that. Probably one of his most notable series and book is Old Man's War. It's a series. The first book is called Old Man's War. That's probably one of his most notable series for that. He also Fuzzy Nation. Fuzzy Nation is a reboot of an older book, not by him, but just with the same characters, kind of same universe. And then Lock-In, and that is a couple books, but we're going to talk about Lock-In today. And just to note, he's written so many other books, probably more than 40 books, more than 40 short stories, but he's written a lot of things. So moving into Lock-In, Lock-In is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it if you like sci-fi, or if you don't like sci-fi and you're a fan of mystery, but it does have a lot of really great sci-fi elements to it. So the main story is about, there's this disease called Hayden's, and it's named after the first person who had it in the book. Weirdly enough, it's kind of relevant today. It's similar to COVID. It causes flu-like symptoms, and then after the flu, you get meningitis, and then people either die from it or they live. And if you live, you either become locked in or you become something that in this universe they call an integrator. So if you become locked in, you can't speak and you can't use your body. If you become an integrator, you can essentially host other people's consciousness in your brain. And to combat this disease, the government put a bunch of money into research and such, and they developed essentially android bodies that they call threps, that the Haydens can project their consciousness into these android bodies. And the important thing to note is that the disease changes their brain chemistry, which allows them to transfer their consciousness, and along with that, they developed an interface that goes in their brain to help them transfer their consciousness to another body. Sometimes Haydens can also transfer their consciousness into the integrators, which they do that because they're humans and they can actually like feel things if they touch them and taste food and things like that, which the Threps can't do. But the main story focuses on the main character. His name is Chris Shane. He's a Hayden, and he was the poster child for Hayden because his dad was really influential and had a lot of money. He used to be a famous basketball player, and then he became really active in the Hayden's community because his son got Hayden's. But the main character is Chris Shane, and he has just become an FBI agent. And his first week on the job, they start investigating this murder, and it turns out, no spoilers, but it turns out it's part of this larger conspiracy, and the whole book is, centered around this one mystery. But it's really interesting because while it does have a lot of sci-fi elements to it, it also has some other interesting things that I've never seen personally in a novel like this. For example, in the story, there's a part where they go to a Navajo reserve and they're kind of working with the Navajos, and you get an introduction into their culture, and I thought that was really interesting, something that I've never seen really in a sci-fi book, or many books, not even sci-fi fantasy books. There's also a conflict between the Haydens and the government because the government is passing a bill that's going to cut funding to Haydens. So that's kind of interesting. Could also relate to the Navajo. And then there's also some elements of civil rights in there because the Haydens and non-Haydens have this, the non-Haydens have a kind of hatred towards the Haydens because they feel like they're getting more resources and more money from the government, etc., etc. But overall, it's a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it. If you do decide to read it, though, I would warn you of the technical jargon. It starts off kind of heavy in that area, but just have patience. It's a really fun book, and I hope you enjoyed.